special one. And I do have my coffee with me. It's a bit of a tradition to bring our coffees to the Coffee with CFSC sessions. And it's late in the day, but I made sure to have my coffee with me for this reason. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We have a really, really great presentation planned today from our philanthropic planning team. So we want to make sure that we have enough time for that and then have time for Q&A at the end. We are going to begin with introductions from our team. And I want to invite the participants to also introduce yourselves using the chat. So if you can write in your name, the organization that you're with, what role you have, and then one word that describes how you're coming into this meeting or how you're feeling today. That will give us a sense of who has joined. And while you do that, we're going to go ahead and introduce ourselves. So I can start. My name is Ariana Diaz de Leon, and I'm Program Director for the Community Impact Team at Community Foundation, Sonoma County, and I've been here for 3.5 years. And I will pass it on to Cheryl, who I'm excited to pass it on to because I think most of you have not met her. So let's go to Cheryl, then Caitlin, then Kristin, and Emily.
Thanks, Ariana. Hello, everybody. I'm Cheryl Alexander, and I am the interim CEO for the Sonoma County Community Foundation, Sonoma County. Sorry, I always get those letters in the wrong place, but I'm excited to be here, and I'm thrilled to know that so many of you are on this call, and I hope to be able to meet some of you soon and hear about all the wonderful things that are going on in Sonoma County. I am going to be a resident of Sonoma County on Friday, as I am moving to Sonoma, so from Palo Alto. So I'm very excited to be here full time and to be able to get to know what's going on by living here. So thank you all for joining us today. And I'm going to pass it on. I forget who you said was next, Ariana.
Caitlin. Let's go to Caitlin.
Hi, everybody. I'm Caitlin Childs. I'm the Director of Communications for the Foundation. I'm really pleased to see you all today. I've been here for about 4 years, and I know I've sat in on a lot of the different coffee events, so I've met some of you through that. And I'm going to be doing kind of the back-end management stuff on the side, so I'm probably going to turn my video off in a minute and just say hello for now.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kristin Nelson. I'm the Director of Philanthropic Advising at the Community Foundation. I'm so excited and pleased to see all of you here today and grateful that you've popped in to have coffee or water. I'm having some today. My giant glass of water. And can't wait to have a little bit more of an in-depth conversation with you as the coffee progresses.
Hi, everyone. I'm Emily Johnson-Anaya. I'm a philanthropic advisor here at Community Foundation, Sonoma County, and I've been here just over 4 years, almost the same time as Caitlin. And I am equally thrilled to be here. Can't wait to get into it.
Great. So that's the CFSC team that will be with you today. For those who have just joined, please drop your intros into the chat. Write your name, your organization's name, your role, and then one word that describes how you're feeling or how you're coming into this meeting. All right. Caitlin, can we start sharing the first slide of the presentation? Whenever you're ready. So for those of you who haven't attended a Coffee with CFSC session in the past, we want to say welcome. And for those of you who have, we want to say welcome back. So we hope that you're going to keep attending these throughout the year. We do hold them quarterly when we're able to. They've been virtual for the past 2 years, but we are hopeful that we'll be able to host them in-person ones again this year.
And Ariana, can you see the presentation? This is my first time ever doing anything with 2 screens.
No worries. I can see it, but it's not in present mode.
Okay. Well, I think that's the 2-screen thing.
Okay.
I'm afraid I don't know how to fix that.
Caitlin, you should be able to switch presenter mode at the top left-hand side.
Oh my gosh. Okay, wait. The top left-hand side of what?
So on the Are you in slideshow mode yet?
Yes, I am.
You are in slideshow mode, and when you go into slideshow in presenter mode, it should open 2 screens at once for you.
Yes.
And then in the top left, which is not the screen I'm seeing right now, the screen that shows like a lot of black,
Yeah.
you should see a
Huh.
somebody else can help Caitlin better than I can.
This is very
Takes a village sometimes. Thank you.
This is very mysterious. I think I'm gonna stop screen sharing for a minute, and I'm just gonna, Ariana, if you want to keep going, I'm gonna
Sure.
solve this.
Okay. No problem, Caitlin. Take your time. So for the coffee sessions, we've been holding them for many years now, and you may have heard of them as Coffee with Karen sessions, Coffee with CIT sessions. Now they're Coffee with CFSC sessions, but the purpose of those has really been to meet you, to get some face time with you, to hear about your organizations, the work that you're doing, understand the needs in the community. And then also we make sure to hold space where you can ask us questions about the Community Foundation, about how we do our grant making, about how we connect with our nonprofit partners. So that's a really important piece of it. Now, last year, we reevaluated how we were holding these coffee sessions. And so we invited our nonprofit community partners to co-create this 2022 year of sessions with us. And we did an online survey, which we sent out to all of our nonprofit community. And we asked questions about what you want to learn and what would be most helpful to you. And then we had a virtual session in December where we spent some time with the participants looking at that data and digging deeper to really assess how we can have an effective session. So one of the things that rose to the top right away is that you want to learn about our donors, about our Community Foundation donors. So as a result of that feedback that you provided us, we're launching this very first coffee session with that purpose. And we are excited that you're going to be able to hear from more of our staff beyond the community impact team at today's session. So there's an entire team at Community Foundation Sonoma County, and everybody plays a big role in making sure that we're able to support our nonprofit partners, that we're connecting to our community. But you mostly see Karen and Annette and myself at the coffee sessions. So we want you to know that there is an entire team at Community Foundation Sonoma County. And today we're focusing on the Philanthropic Planning Department and their work with our donors. So we are proud to be kicking off this very first Coffee with CFSC in partnership with Emily and with Kristin. And they've prepared a really, really wonderful presentation. And I think you're going to learn a lot about our donors today through them. So we are going to have some time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. And when we get to that point, I am going to ask, if you're comfortable, if you're okay with this, if you're able to do this, that you turn your video on, because, we want to be in community. We want to see your faces. We want you to see each other. So when that time comes, I'll prompt you so that we can all see each other during the Q&A. And throughout the presentation, you're also welcome to drop your questions into the chat as you hear Kristin and Emily. What I'm going to do is I'm going to collect those questions so that then we can address them once we get to the Q&A. So please don't be shy. Feel free to use the chat. I'll monitor it as best I can. And we will be spending some time with you at the end to answer your question. And now with that, if we have the PowerPoint figured out, I will pass it on to Emily and Kristin.
I think we do.
Hooray, look at that.
I lost everybody, but I think it's going to work now. There we go. Yes.
Well, actually, it looks like we're, yep, no, we're there.
No, that's it. It's good.
You did it. Great job, Caitlin. And everybody who jumped in, thank you so much. We're so grateful. It is, as Cheryl said, it takes a village. So I love that this could happen this way today. So I'm so grateful to be here with you today, and so excited that you want to learn about our work with donors. So I thought I'd start by giving just a little bit of an overview of what the Philanthropic Advising team does. we have the privilege of being able to work with the Community Foundation's donors who've chosen to create a philanthropic tool with us. And most of the tools are likely to be a donor advised fund, which is what we're going to spend the bulk of our time talking about today. But some donors have also chosen to make other gifts to the Community Foundation to the funds that we actually are able to do grant making from, either as directed gifts or planned gifts. But we're not going to talk about that part today. Instead, I thought we could start with like a little bit of a donor advised fund 101, just to kind of make sure we're all on the same page. Caitlin, can you do the next slide? Mm-hmm. When a donor opens a DAF or a donor advised fund and makes a gift to that vehicle, to that charitable vehicle, the gifts then qualify for a tax deduction at the time that the gift is made to the fund. The really, really cool thing about this is that the money can then be granted out more strategically over time. And it's almost like it's a charitable checking account that sits there. Charitable dollars are invested then, and there's an opportunity for them to grow the fund size and then therefore increase the amount of money that becomes available for philanthropic purposes. One of the most important elements of a donor advised fund isn't one that we talk about necessarily or that donors talk about necessarily, but it's one that the IRS talks about all the time, which is that a donor recommends a grant from the fund, and then the Community Foundation or a DAF provider will implement that grant. Also, donor advised funds is a vehicle that allows a donor to give anonymously to nonprofits. So all that's great, but what we really like about this as a charitable tool, I mean, that stuff's great, but what we love about it is that it allows these much richer and larger conversations to happen between donors and nonprofits. These conversations are often things about family values or community impact or charitable and community goals, legacy, leadership, collaboration, and on and on and on. And why we love this is that we see that these are the conversations that really inspire and spurn on these much richer and more meaningful gifts, both for donors and for nonprofits. So, Carol, Caitlin, could you switch over to the next slide, please? So I wanted to give you a sense of what advised funds look like at the Community Foundation and share a little bit of data now. The data I'm going to be sharing with you is basically from the end of 2021, and 2021. And it's really looking at the advised funds at the Community Foundation. So I want to just call out that this excludes funds that are field of interest or unrestricted funds or scholarship funds. So these tend to be the funds that we have control and can do our own grant making from. So these are not those funds. At the Community Foundation at the end of last year, we had about 300 of these funds. Our donor advised funds made up 46% of those funds. And those are funds that have an advisor who's often an individual, a family, or a couple who started that fund. And then when a small group of people come together to create a fund, that's called a committee advised funds. And those funds make up about 9% of the funds that we hold. And then we have a small little slice of something called a corporate advised fund, which is really similar to a donor advised fund, but instead those are created by a business. We do hold donor advised funds at the Community Foundation that are families who might do grant making for their family business as well as their individual family and themselves as well. And those are not included as a corporate advised fund. So together, this makes up about 60% of the funds that we have. I just wanted to call out that you can see that there's two additional buckets here on this pie chart. And we're not going to talk about them today beyond this, but I think they're both worth talking or kind of explaining the process a little bit. Designated funds are funds that a donor creates with a single nonprofit beneficiary in mind. And these are oftentimes endowments, and they're left as part of a legacy plan. The Community Foundation has about 55 of those funds that we hold for various nonprofits in the community. We also hold agency or nonprofit funds, and these are the funds that a lot of you on this call today, your organizations hold these funds. The idea is that the Community Foundation takes care of all that tedious back-end stuff. We take care of the investments, the governance, the fiduciary, including a lot of the board oversight. We do all the reporting, all of that, so that nonprofits don't have to. The goal is really that you get to focus on your mission and not having to field an investment policy or an investment advisory committee and make sure you have the right people in the pipeline for that year after year, which we know can be extremely time consuming. Our goal at the Community Foundation is really to grow the philanthropic resources in our community to impact and support the work of nonprofits of you. We know that providing all of these different types of funds and tools, they allow different donors and different nonprofits to come together in a way that supports their place and their goals all in one. Caitlin, would you switch slides, please? When we look at the patterns of giving over time, we've seen a lot of significant growth in giving as donors have adapted their giving to coronavirus. This is data from 2019. Donors gave about $7 million with grants, and you can see that there's a really big spike at year end, which I'm sure is what you as development folks, you've experienced this as well. In 2020, this has changed quite a bit, and you can see that there's a really big spike starting in March. And this is a time when we encourage donors who had funds at the Community Foundation to make grants like it was year end. And you can see that donations continuing at a steady pace throughout the year, but with a comparatively smaller boost at year end than what we saw the previous year. And overall, our donors gave nearly $3 million more in 2020 in response to the pandemic. And this trend, it continued in 2021 with donors giving over $9.6 million. When we look at the grants that were made in 2021, and these are again from advised funds only, you can see that these resources, what they can really do in the community. $9.6 million, it was so exciting. We made over 1,000 grants to over 500 nonprofits, different nonprofits. The most frequent mode or the most frequent grant amount is $1,000, and the median grant size was $2,500. Next slide. Okay, so I just have to say, this is a slide that I love so much. I'm a little bit of a data wonk, but also this slide tells a story that goes so much deeper, and it speaks to just the love of place that we see. Nearly 90% of donors made grants, and their grants stayed locally. So 77% went to Sonoma County organizations, and an additional 12 went to other Bay Area nonprofits. This speaks so much to the truth of our donors who are so generous about supporting Sonoma County and this place that we all know and love, and it just makes my heart sing. Next slide. Thanks. I thought we could dig in a little bit and look at where these donors were giving. 59% of all the grants that went out in 2021 were to health and human services organizations, 17% to education organizations, arts and culture received 7%, environmental organizations 6%, and animal welfare was 1%. That other bucket is kind of a little bit of a catch-all, but it includes religious organizations as well. I think we can stop sharing the slides. Great. Earlier, I shared the value of having an advised fund, the actual charitable tool itself, kind of getting into the weeds with that, my nerdy self. But having an advised fund at a community foundation offers some added benefits compared to other donor advised fund providers. Mostly, it's that we are your neighbors and your friends and your colleagues and your community members, and we're right here with you in Sonoma County. And we care deeply about the work that happens. As such, we can really offer fund holders with local knowledge, and we can talk about needs and trends and opportunities in real time. We can also offer this kind of unique philanthropic service and philanthropic advising lens that takes into account this local component. Our philanthropic advising services are the services that we provide to support fund holders and their gifts into the community. Straightforward. The goal is to help donors to navigate the many charitable needs in the community in order to support those that are most personally meaningful to them. While we often work in what like the how and the what and the when of giving, we've found that when we can connect with the why, that big why of supporting certain nonprofits, the impact is greater for both donors and for nonprofits. At the Community Foundation, we really feel like the sweet spot for us, the best place that we can possibly be, is where we have a seat at the table with the fund holders that we get to work with. That means we're just one person at the table, but we're sitting and talking with their attorneys, with the donors, with their CPAs and their estate planning professionals, with family business leaders and tax planners. And the reason is because we find that through these relationships, we hope to build lasting trust so that our fund holders are really comfortable and confident in using the information that we get to share with them. That information, it comes from you, as well as from assessments about community needs, data collection that we're doing, and partnerships that we might have within the community. Because again, the aim is really to support fund holders in making these informed and impactful grants within the community. So in order to share those details, we first ask donors if they would like us to share this information. They've got to opt in. Many donors already have relationships with nonprofits and know exactly who they want to give to, and they don't want information and input from us. And because of that, they may not opt in to receive data. So I thought I would start. This is a question that I know you all have on your minds, which is how do we share information with these donors who opt in? The first thing we do is that we look at and constantly inform ourselves based on the updates that you are giving us, these shared summaries and updates that you are sharing with both the community impact team, Ariana and Karen, and with Emily and I. Whenever we get that information, we share it with everybody. So if you send it to one person, we all know about it. And then we reach out to donors and we share those summaries, we share those updates based on the interest that they've expressed to us. We do that through emails, we pick up the phone. We're really big on a lot of direct communication to ensure that we can get details to donors. In an ideal world, and I think we're getting closer to that right now, we're having as many meetings as we possibly can as well to get in front of people and to share information about your organizations. We also do site visits, we research based on donors' interest, we convene experts or nonprofit leaders, we compile white papers and data and on and on and on. So we're really behind the scenes researchers and information sharers. Okay, so you know how I said we only share with people who opt in? Well, that's partially true. We at the Community Foundation, we do feel an obligation to share the community needs widely, whoever that means, even if donors don't always opt in. But we have to be really careful about the way we do that, and we have to do it in a little bit of a softer way. So this is how we share information for those donors. We have two kind of primary ways that this happens. The first is that we have an online resource that we have for donors. They can log into our Giving Center, which is a tool we have for donors to access information about their fund. And in that Giving Center, we have a Giving Opportunities page where we post short descriptions about community needs and how nonprofits are filling that need. This is a list that could be 6 or 24 organizations that we highlight to make it really simple for donors to make grants from their fund directly to those organizations. We want that list to be as diverse, both in terms of the geographic reach, the sectors that are being highlighted, the service approach, and the need. As you can imagine, there are lots and lots of nonprofits. There's no imagination. I know you know. There's many, many nonprofits in Sonoma County. So we also limit the frequency that we post giving opportunities about any one single organization to once every 2 years. Otherwise, we would be inundated And also our donors wouldn't get that richness and diversity to learn about new organizations. We really want donors to read that list and to say, huh, I didn't even know about that organization. I didn't even realize I was interested in supporting an organization in this area. We want to pique their interest, to use this as a tool to grow their understanding of what community needs are. In an ideal world, they're also then, some of them are selecting and choosing to make grants to your organizations as well that are on the giving opportunities. So that's one of the tools that we use. The second is a pretty straightforward and simple one. We use mass communications as a tool, just like I know a lot of you do as well. And we share opportunities when unique situations come up and we feel like we need to get information in front of all of our fund holders all at one time. So an example of that is that about a week and a half ago, we sent out an email to all of our fund holders listing humanitarian organizations doing work in response to the crisis in Ukraine. Last week, as a result of that email, and we also paired that with the giving opportunities, more than $100,000 worth of grants went out the door. This week, another $20,000 is going out the door. It's really powerful. I'm so proud and thrilled that the donors in our community are stepping in to do this kind of work. So with all that, I know that the real reason that you're here isn't just to hear how the Community Foundation does our work or what grants happened last year. You told us in the survey that you really wanted to learn more about the specifics from our donors. So I'm going to hand you over to my absolutely incredible colleague, Emily Johnson, who's going to share a couple of donor stories with you from our essential portfolio.
Thanks, Kristin. Hello, everyone again. Thanks so much for being here. So at the Community Foundation, we have 2 levels of services for our fund holders, Essential and Elevate. I work with the fund holders in our Essential portfolio. Our Essential donors in general, they have more of a transactional relationship with us. They tend to be more traditional and predictable fund holders, and the services that we provide for them are different than what we offer our Elevate portfolio, which we'll get into a little later. So majority of our Essential fund holders, I may hear from once or twice a year when they need to ask a question about making a stock gift, or maybe they got logged out of the Giving Center Kristin was mentioning, and they need to get back in to help make a grant. Most of these donors know what grants they want to make coming into the relationship with us. They tend to know the nonprofits that they want to support and make annual grants to support the same few each year. They also usually tend to make smaller grants, but more of them overall. Of course, some of the donors do want more help, but overall, with our Essential portfolio, donors really want us to meet them where they're at. At the end of the day, they're all individuals with their own preferences and reasons why they're here. One example I'd really like to talk to you about today are a couple that have been with us for a number of years. Their grant making is fairly simple. They like to do mostly everything on their own, and our involvement with them is largely reactive and sort of dependent on their own needs. This couple's fund is sustained by one annual gift that is spent down each year. Their grant making consists of a handful of grants, responsive grants actually, for totaling about $10,000 throughout the year. And then at the end of every year, they usually make a larger round of grants for about $20,000 in total. Of those grants, their average grant size is $1,000, which lines up with the average grant size of our donors. And most of their grants go towards general operating support, which also lines up with our overall giving trends. This particular example is important because they're such a prime example of a typical Essential donor. They prefer to do everything they can do on their own and came into the Community Foundation with an idea of what organizations they wanted to support already. At times, I have sent them giving opportunities, but they've actually responded asking us not to. since they're so committed to who they already give to. So we actually don't influence their giving at all. We provide a tool for them that works and service when they need it. Like I said earlier, every donor is different, and sometimes they even change in the way that they prefer to work with us over time. I work with another donor who used to be largely inactive in her grant making due to some family circumstances. Just so you all know, when a fund is inactive, which is rare by the way, we actually have over a 20% payout rate annually. We do everything in our power to encourage grant making. And if we don't hear back within a certain amount of time, we actually ask our board to approve of us making a grant on behalf of the donor so that we make sure our funds don't just sit around. When this donor's fund came into my portfolio and was inactive, I reached out to her with giving opportunities that I thought she might be interested based on her past giving history, and was so happy to see that she responded positively to my outreach. And she actually made a grant that was meaningful to her based on one of my recommendations. Since then, she's made several of her own grants and is largely self-sufficient, but I do continue to look for opportunities that match her interests. And when I see something compelling, I always send it to her. In terms of her overall giving, she averages a little less, about 4 grants a year, and her average grant size is $4,000. She likes to give more towards special projects too, and rarely gives to a general fund. I also work with donors who are more involved in their grant making and do want my input. One example of this is a donor who recently relocated to Sonoma County and doesn't have a lot of knowledge about the community. So he really relies on us to give him that information. He's most interested in music education and homelessness. I speak to this donor at least once a month, if not more, which for an essential donor is actually highly engaged. Over time, I've gotten to know the types of projects that match well with this donor's values and interests. So when I do put a proposal in front of him, he almost always says yes, which of course is wonderful, it's what we want. But I want to reiterate that this is the exception by far. He hasn't been with us as long as some of our other donors, but so far his grants are right around that $1,000 mark and go towards specific projects. So I wanted to talk about each of these donors today because our relationship to them is a really good example of the nuance of the donors that I work with. While the majority of the work I do with our essential portfolio is based on supporting them in making the grants they've already decided on, you can also see that we're able to help our donors with things outside of that, like providing personalized giving opportunities and holding the space to have deeper discussions about issues they care about and how they can help. I also wanted to touch on each of these examples because of their decision to remain private. Kristin touched on this a little bit earlier, but donor-advised funds help donors give differently. The actual mechanism of a donor-advised fund is attractive because it's streamlined and efficient for most people. But more than that, it can be a way for donors to remain anonymous. I have donors in my portfolio right now who have relationships with some of you, whether or not you know of their fund here. But more often than not, including for each of the earlier examples, our donors like to keep a higher level of anonymity. Now, this isn't necessarily to keep nonprofits out. We know that you have their best interest at heart. It's actually often for much more personal reasons. Some of our donors are really private about their wealth. They want their relationships with their friends, with their family, colleagues, just the community. They want it to remain normal and to not be seen as a checkbook or given unwanted attention when they're maybe at one of your events or just out at the grocery store. Now, of course, that doesn't diminish their contributions to our community or how we appreciate them. So when you ask to be connected to a donor, please know that it is not fun for us to play gatekeeper, but we do have a duty to maintain donor privacy. That being said, when you do want to thank a donor personally, we highly encourage you to send us personalized thank you letter or a card, and we'll always forward that to the donor on your behalf. Overall, our essential portfolio is one of the key places where we can show up and meet our donors where they are, whether they're looking for grant ideas or just utilizing their donor advised fund as a tool. The best way that I can serve my donors and you is to stay informed on what you're doing. We're so incredibly grateful when nonprofits keep us updated on their work by sending us updates that we can share, being responsive to outreach, and when appropriate, working with us to set up site visits. All of these help us keep our donors informed of current community needs, and our communication with you is vital to that work. Like all of you, our donors share such a deep love of our community, and they give because they want to see it improve. When I started here, I was so struck by the generosity of our donors. And one thing that I found was really meaningful is the consistency of our essential donors giving and the sustainability of their gifts. And it's been such a privilege to see the impact that these donors have collectively made in our community in just the short time that I've been a philanthropic advisor. It's also been really neat to work alongside my colleague, Kristin, who can tell you a little bit more about the services that we offer to our Elevate donors. Oh, I think you're muted.
There we go. Now I'm back up. Well, Emily, thank you so much. Before I share about our Elevate Fund holders, I thought I would give you a little bit of context into the origin of having these two separate service areas. Several years ago, the Community Foundation did a survey of our donors. We actually do this periodically. But one that we did a couple of years ago, we got some really interesting data back. And it was the first look at our donors' preferences and an opportunity for us to learn that some of our donors didn't really want input from us. They were more like those donors, specifically the one that Emily described. Over the next several years, we had a lot of conversations with donors and even with other community foundations who were experiencing similar feedback from their donors. And we did a deep assessment of the giving that was happening from the funds that we held. And what we learned is that there were some funds that have capacity and interest to make larger grants and being more strategic in their giving. And then there were donors who hold funds that were more transactional, like those that Emily just described. We took a risk and we decided to divide our donors into these two pools and provide services that really met donors where they were at with the services that they wanted. Elevate donors have access to the same services that essential donors have, and then just a few more things that we can use and tools that we can use with them to advance their giving goals. These donors tend to recommend larger grants that are more strategic, they're more collaborative. Oftentimes they are aligned with nonprofit specific goals or special projects, or they may even launch new work in the community. So with that context, I just feel like I have such a privilege and honor to share two stories with you about some donors that I get to work with from my Elevate portfolio. The first couple I'd like to share with you are just, okay, I'm just going to say they're some of my favorite people. I just adore them so much. Their giving tends to be a mix of between their passions and their expertise and the way that they hold their community to care for those who are less privileged than themselves. They make grants year-round because they recognize the need to support causes and organizations that they care most about are constant. They get it. 43% of all of the grants that they make, or they made in 2021, I should say, are arts and cultures related grants. And this is really a passion that they hold, that the arts thrive locally and not just in large A-list museums in big cities. A third of the grant making they do is to health and human services organizations. And this is where I see their natural compassion just shining through. This is their heart manifesting itself in their giving. And it's really lovely. It's so beautiful. An additional 13% of their grant making is now happening to environmental organizations. And this is a real growth area for them. And it's based on more recent interests that they've both had, as well as seeing what the needs are, emerging needs, and how things are shifting in both our community and nationally. Each year they make about 50 grants total. So that's a big difference from some of the donors that are in the essential portfolio. They're doing 50 grants, and their grants total about just over $200,000 a year on average. Their average grant size is $4,500. So these donors in particular, they like to utilize the Community Foundation for the convenience that we offer them, but also for something that I like to refer to as their philanthropic gut check. They were the very first donor to give to a startup nonprofit a couple of years ago. We even had to hold the grant for a number of months until the nonprofit had finally been able to get their charitable status. The Community Foundation performed an extensive amount of due diligence on their behalf and research into how this new organization would fit within the larger needs of the county and the community and the landscape, and which allowed these donors to really have confidence that they were taking a risk in supporting an organization without a track record. So really our role was to help them and to help them feel confident to make this grant, which launched a new organization. This couple also is working to build their own relationships with nonprofits. They don't just rely on me as their person to do that, but they have asked for my support to help foster these relationships and information flow, because their lives are complicated and they are busy people, and it's hard to keep all 50 of those grants and organizations to track that well over time. So that's a role that we can play to support their giving. I also provide them with lots and lots of education for current needs in the community, as well as with organizations that might be new to them, but that do align with their interests and their values and the goals that they have for their community. I've taken them on site visits, and I've done a lot of research on special topics on their behalf. And I'm just gonna say, I know this is something you probably have all experienced as well. I feel like I learned so much by having a donor join a site visit with me. I see the world through their eyes. They ask new questions that I didn't think of. Those experiences help organizations, they help donors, and they help us at the Community Foundation to better understand some of the needs on the ground that are happening, as well as possibilities and opportunities for the future. There's one really interesting thing I'd like to share about this particular couple that I think is pretty neat for them. They've, in the last couple of years, have really kind of expanded their interest in collaborating with other donors who have a similar interest for them. And for them, specifically, the place that they want to do that and collaborate with other donors is more aligned with their environmental giving. And this is because this is another place that they feel like they can really learn a lot from other donors' experiences as well. So they're, regularly looking for opportunities to build relationships with other donors. So let me share one more story with you. I also have just the real pleasure of working with a multi-generational Sonoma County family that is quite complicated and nuanced as well. This family holds a family fund with us at the Community Foundation, as well as individual family members also having their own donor advised funds for separate, more targeted giving that's directed just from them. But the donor advised funds that they hold, they're not their only charitable tool that they have. In addition, the family business makes charitable gifts into the community. And this family is adamant. They want to ensure that the grant making that they're doing from their family funds complements their corporate giving as well. This means that every year I analyze what donations have been made, what are likely going to be made, as well as what larger gifts different family members may be likely to make, who in the family maybe has board service, or maybe expecting to receive some type of honor or award that could trigger an additional gift. This is all laid on top of the family's own passions and commitments to give to Sonoma County nonprofits. I work with a myriad of different family members and staff to aggregate all of this information and then to make recommendations that tie all of the pieces together about what their grant making should look like. We meet several times over the course of the last quarter of the year, which is typically when they do most of their grant making from this fund. During these meetings, I share with them trends in community needs and what various organizations are working to meet those needs, special projects or opportunities that might leverage philanthropic resources or might make a really specific charitable impact. They always come to the table well-informed and incredibly curious and open-minded. Then together, we craft this plan, which is for all of their giving for that year, which encompasses all the myriad of all these moving pieces that are in their lives. This family also has a really personal why story about why they give. Through their philanthropy, they're honoring family members who have passed away, but were the ones who taught them about giving back. They understand the privilege that they were gifted, and they feel they have an obligation to give back to the community. This is a value that's been passed down from generation to generation for them. They can see that in their giving from their family fund, you can see it in how they have laced this throughout their corporate giving, their volunteerism, and even the way that they do everything in their power to inspire other people in the community to step into philanthropy, whether it's $5 gifts or $500,000 gifts. They tend to grant about $125,000 each year, and they give overwhelmingly to health and human services organizations, which if you think about their why and the compassion that's behind that, it makes a lot of sense. Their average grant size is almost $7,500. And a really neat trend that I've seen them develop over the last few years is happening both with their family fund and the businesses, which I love. This is kind of the integration that's happening. In both cases, they're drifting away from project-based philanthropy, which is what they used to do more typically, and they're making more and more grants that are mission-based. This means far more general operating support grants on a regular basis, and that just thrills us. We want you to be able to have access to the funds that you need and be able to acknowledge that you know what's best for your organization and that you can make those grants. You can use the money appropriately. Both our Essential and our Elevate donors are just hugely important to the success of nonprofits in Sonoma County. Our goal is to help them to make the greatest impact in the community. Our fund holders, the nonprofits and community members, they all expressed really different styles and intentions and approaches and values. In other words, just as Emily said earlier, philanthropy comes in all shapes and sizes, and we honor all of those. It is such an honor for us to be able to work with these generous fund holders and to help them meet their giving goals. Together, I think I can say this. I believe that we really all think together. We're in partnership in this service, that this is of a service to all of you. We do our grant making, we support donors so that we can support you as nonprofits and your colleagues in Sonoma County nonprofits. I know I can speak for these donors, and I'm making an assumption, but also for my colleagues at the Community Foundation when I say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for everything that you're doing. It's truly an honor to be your champion in the community. So I'm going to pass it over. I think we're going to do some questions now. Here we go. We're all coming back.
All right. Thank you so much, Kristin and Emily. That was wonderful. And I really, really hope that the participants today learned something new about how we work with donors and about the donors that we have at Community Foundation Sonoma County. So here is the prompt. I'd love for you to take yourself, open up your video if you're able to, if you're comfortable doing that. I can see that some of you already are sharing your videos. So that's wonderful. We love to see your faces and for you all to see each other. And I have captured some questions that came in early. I see a few more coming in now, so I'll be sure to circle back to those. So Kristin and Emily, I'm going to start off with the ones that came in through the chat. The very first one was regarding the agency advice funds, which I know that we didn't spend too much time on, but there is a question about the fee for an agency advice fund that Meg is asking about.
Yeah, sure. I can jump into that. I think, you can hear me, but you can't see me. Is that right?
I think they can see you, but you're on a smaller box now.
Okay, I'm fine with that. So the Community Foundation charges, we have a foundation support fee that's 1.5%, but it's really a scale based on the size of the fund for agency funds. We recommend that funds are starting at about $250,000 or have a growth plan to get to that phase or that size, just to make it something that can really work for you as nonprofit leaders. If it's a smaller fund, you want to be able to access the money and use it however you can, and we don't want to be taking a cut of that if it's not really going to work for everybody. So if you have specific questions about, and you're thinking about opening an agency fund, I would encourage you to reach out directly to me. We can put my email in the chat, and then I can have a conversation and we can see if it's the right fit for you.
Great. Thank you so much, Kristin.
Mm-hmm.
There's a really interesting question from Michelle Whitman. Hi, Michelle, asking if Community Foundation Sonoma County has considered program-related investment as a tool for another vehicle that donors can possibly use and as a way to attract new donors.
Yeah, do you want me to take that? We have considered it. At the time where we were looking at this, we just didn't have the staff capacity to manage this. It's definitely not something that we have locked out as a permanent thing. We just weren't able to take it on at the time when we were first looking at it. If you again, are thinking you have a donor that you want to partner with for something around a PRI, just let us know. We can revisit that.
Thank you, Kristin.
Yeah.
For this next one, this question by Patrick, it really ties into how does it work when an organization receives a DAF gift? How will they know that they've received that? And this, maybe you could talk a little bit about how we communicate with nonprofits when they receive a gift.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. Unless Emily wants to jump in and do it.
Yeah, we can definitely tag team this one.
Okay.
So we've said it, probably upwards of 5 times, a donor needs to recommend a grant. So once they do recommend that grant, the grant goes out and we communicate with the nonprofit in as much as sending them a letter with the grant amount, the fund name or donor name, depending on their preference of being private or anonymous, and what that grant is for. We're completely open. You have our information, it's on our website. So if you have questions when you get that grant, we're open to talking with you, having a deeper conversation if you have questions about what that money is for. But other than that, that's how we process those. Kristin, do you have anything to add?
That was perfect.
Thank you. And who should they contact, Emily, if they do receive that and want to learn more or have questions?
That's a great question.
It comes to me in the letter. It actually has my contact information on that. And if you have any specific questions, or if there's a concern or anything like that, you can put it to my attention or send me an email or call me, and I can help triage that to the right person on staff.
Exactly.
Great. There is a question from Tim Miller, who had to step out for a moment. So he wanted us to just quickly review, what is the process for an agency to submit its needs or its areas of focus for review by donors? So maybe we could review the communication piece, how that communication gets to us, and then how it's shared.
I can start, Kristin, if you'd like. There are several different ways that we can do this. The easiest way that we find for us and for you is to email us information about your needs. When you send any one of us on our team or on Ariana's team an update, we share it with the whole organization, so that we're all aware of whatever that need is. So we know, do we reach out to Ariana for questions, or do we reach out to Tim for questions? And in that way, we can all stay abreast of what's going on. Also, we sometimes have, as I said, every donor is different. So if they want something a little bit more in depth, that's where we get into, doing site visits, things like that. Maybe scheduling a Zoom meeting or an in-person meeting with us and you, or at some points with that donor.
Thank you, Emily. I also see questions in here that relate to that, asking who the best person is to contact to provide this information to, how you can provide this information to us. So there are a few different ways. One is you could just email us, provide information about the program or the organization that you're with, talk about the needs, and that is something that we would share with each other. Another thing that we offer is you can provide us with what we call a one-pager, and that doesn't have to be one page, but we call it that because it's a concise way of getting information to us about your program or your organization and what the particular need is. So it doesn't need to have graphics or pictures or anything fancy, because it hardly ever makes its way to the donors just like that. This is information that we digest, we share with the philanthropic planning team, with our colleagues, so that we're all aware of those needs. So, any basic information that you want to put on that one pager that's concise is helpful. And then, like Emily mentioned, if we know who to contact, then we'll reach out if more information or more details are needed.
I also want to add just a little bit to the end of that, which is we really appreciate you sending us this information so we can all know what's happening at your organizations. And if we reach out, if one of us reaches out to you directly with a question, it means, 99% of the time that question came from a donor. So just to keep that in mind. We definitely don't want to waste any of your time. So those are only done when we have a need.
And I would add one additional piece to this, which is that we are really motivated to ensure that you get to focus on the work that you do. Focus on your mission. That means that we don't need beautiful graphics and things that you design just for us. As a matter of fact, we very much hope that you don't ever do that. We want you to use materials and information that you already have so that you can share that with us. In an ideal world, you're almost copying and pasting information and sending it over to us. We want you to focus on your mission. We can distill, because we're not passing those things directly on to a donor. We'll create some internal summaries if we have a specific person that we're sharing this with that looks at that. And so you don't have to. So just make sure that you know that we don't have to have something that's beautiful and polished. I saw Jody's question pop up in the chat. I don't think I would give you a perfect one, because I don't want you to have to strive for an ideal and spend all of your efforts and time polishing. I'd rather have you spend your work on your mission.
Exactly. I strongly second that. And a few years ago, we did share the upstream investments template that they had created for their own purposes. We adopted it and we were sharing it as a possible template for nonprofits to use, but it was a few pages long, and we found that there was a lot of effort going into creating those, and without necessarily resulting in any gifts or grants on the back end. So we really, really want to be careful and not have you spend too much time on something. If you can copy and paste, send something over, that's the ideal. Okay, I do see a couple questions in here about the giving opportunity list, and specifically how they can get on that, which I know is not the right way to ask it, but I'll ask it that way and let you explain.
Yeah. Okay. So we really select giving opportunities. We have a really strong criteria list that we use. We want every single donor to see something that they are interested in and could possibly see themselves funding, just one thing on that list at any given time. So we look at all of those updates that you share with the community impact team, that you share with us individually, and we select a handful of those things that we see like, oh, you know, right now we might see that there's a real need for emergency food. And because of that, we might escalate projects or programs that are supporting people who need food. We might be doing things that we had some stuff on forestry and some environmental work a little while ago that we escalated some of those. So if we see a particular need, that's when we'll kind of step in and try to fill that with giving opportunities. I wouldn't say you can't lobby us to try to get us up there. We're not going to choose things on that. We're going to be looking at the big picture of what's happening in the community. You know, we always want to have maybe something from healthcare. We always want to have something that is education, environment. We really want diversity in the list that we're showing. And we also like to showcase organizations that donors might not know about as well. So I would just say, keep sending us the updates. That's how you'll get there.
Thank you, Kristin. I want to do a quick time check. It is 2 p.m. and I know spending more than an hour on Zoom can be exhausting. So if any of you feel like you've received plenty of information and you want to hop off, feel free to do so. You are more than welcome to. This is being recorded, and it's going to be recorded all the way through and will be shared out. So you can always circle back and continue listening to the Q&A. So we're going to keep going through the questions and answering those. But anybody who would like to hop off now, please know that you can do so. Okay. So here's a great question for Kristin or Emily. What strategies do we use to encourage essential donors to become Elevate donors?
Emily, you want to talk about that?
Sure, I can start. I think that there's two avenues of this question, of answering this question. And the first is some donors will never be Elevate donors, whether that's based on preference or capacity. And the other side of this is everything that we just presented to you is how we encourage donors to be more thoughtful and intentional with their giving, which we hope will translate into being an Elevate donor. The trust that we build with them over years, each time we meet with them, each time we help them with something as simple as logging onto our giving center, or as complex as some of the things that Kristin works on with her donors, each time we can help them get to the place where they feel comfortable and like they're making a difference. Those points will hopefully lead them on a journey to becoming that ideal donor. I will also say that Kristin said earlier, you know, we are very supportive of all of your work. We, in almost all cases, attempt to encourage donors to give to mission-based work, to general operating support when we can, when is appropriate. So some donors, like some of the examples I shared, are very set in their ways, and that is okay. They come to us with, you know, we're meeting them where they are, like we've said. So those, like I said, will probably never become that type of donor, but others in time, we hope we'll get there.
Thank you, Emily. So other than data, how does a donor measure the impact and reach of their donation?
I think there's ways that they can do this just by the stories they hear that are told to them, and some of those come directly from you to the donors, and some of them are stories that are shared with us where we can circle back and share that with people. I mean, of course, data is really nice, but we also think that there's a lot of things that just happen on the ground, on the day-to-day, where there's a moment where you can see a charitable gift in action and you can tell a story, and that's profoundly impactful for a donor. You know, we look at impact in a couple of ways. One of them is what happens with the nonprofit and the individuals and the land and the animals that they're caring for, right? But the other side of it is something that we also see on our side, which is the impact that has on.
Yeah. Hang on, I'm on a webinar, but
we can hear you. Okay, so I think the other piece of this is the impact that it has on those donors who are making gifts. So that is something that, I mean, that's a myriad of ways you can see that kind of come to fruition. You can see it with donors who have added succession plans for their funds. You can see it with the way that they're engaging their next generation, their kids, in giving, so that hopefully, you know, one of the big legacies they have isn't just a gift that they made to help build a building, but it's also the fact that now their kids are going to be lifelong philanthropists or givers. And I will say, we see this with the little kids and we see this with the adult children too. So it's pretty impactful and cool.
I think if I can also add, I think this is also where the kind of mutual feedback loop comes in of, like, if you receive a grant from a donor advised fund at the foundation and you send us a thank you note for that donor, you know, that's another way for them to learn about and see their impact, is through that type of thing. So we always communicate back to our donors when we receive things like that. And it helps kind of reinforce that they, you know, they didn't just give a grant, they're also hearing back from you all, from us, to learn more about the impact of their gift every time that we receive communications back from you all related to their grant.
Absolutely. And I just want to say one quick thing is that thank you notes in the mail are great, but also don't hesitate to email us those. That's honestly a lot easier at this point in time for most of our donors. So.
Thank you, Emily. That was the segue to the question from Susana Rodriguez about printed materials. If you want to send printed materials, whether it's, you know, a newsletter or a beautiful annual report, if you want to send it in the mail, you're welcome to. We still circulate it around the office, but sending it electronically is extremely helpful. And it's a much quicker way for it to get to us and then for us to be able to share it out as well. There was a question about whether we are, let me see if I can find who submitted it. I think it was Nicole Warwick, about whether we're encouraging donors to give to climate change. And that's a great question. I can't speak for donors, so I'll let Kristin and Emily and Caitlin chime in for that piece. But we, as a community foundation, our board did make a decision to add addressing climate change as part of our resilience fund grant making work. So it's something that we're researching currently, something that we're looking into to see within Sonoma County, where can we have an impact, always aligned with equity, of course. So if you have programming that's related to that, if you're aware of something happening that is innovative and you think is important for us to know, feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to have a chat and learn more.
So I can say that we don't always encourage to every single donor, you should be giving to climate action or climate change or climate resilience projects. And the reason is because we spend a lot of time getting to know what donors want to be giving to and what their areas of interest are. And then we customize the recommendations that we give to them. So when we get feedback from the donor and they say, really, you know, the family that I made kind of told the donor story about, they give, it's like 97% to health and human services organizations. I know that they also have an interest that some of those family members are giving to other types of environmental organizations. So wherever I can see that there's an intersection of work, then I'll share those kind of programs and opportunities to them. But we're not trying to drive recommendations away from where a donor's interest is. We really are letting them say, hey, this is what I want to give to. and then we'll help them to get to that place to be more strategic and impactful.
All right, I'm going through the chat. I don't see any questions that we've missed, but if we did miss your question, feel free to drop it in the chat again or to unmute yourself and just ask. And Kristin, Emily, Caitlin, Cheryl, if any of you see a question that we haven't asked, feel free to chime in as well. Okay, well, we might have reached the end of our session. So this is really, really exciting. I'm so glad that we kicked off the Coffee with CFSC sessions with this one. I know it was an important one for all of you to hear about. And it really was the feedback that we received from our nonprofit partners that that drove us to create this session in partnership with Kristin and with Emily and with the philanthropic planning team. So it's exciting that we were able to bring a new team to the forefront to spend some time with all of you. And, sign up for our newsletter if you haven't done so already. For the next coffee session, we'll be sure to send information out through there. We're hoping to have an in-person one soon, and there's likely to be one that will allow for networking between nonprofits and for more collaboration to take place. So stay tuned, and great to see you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you.